Hello, Nexilist. I'm Alan, and today I'm going to talk about something that's very controversial, something that's usually frowned upon, something that it's absolutely underestimated. Of course, I'm talking about self-awareness, self-knowledge. Yeah, so it's been improving for a while, but still a lot of people don't focus on this, don't pay attention to self-awareness, to self-knowledge, to emotional intelligence. And I know the reasons why. Usually it's quite boring, right? It's not fun to look at yourself, to look at your mistakes, to look at your past, to look at your traumas. But lots of people have been studying this, and they have been making this more interesting, more easily accessible. Yeah, so you don't need to be an academic, you don't need to be a psychologist. I am not a psychologist. Yeah, to talk about those things and to implement those tools and those mindsets. I'm sorry for saying this. Usually, especially in South America, mindset is like a bad word nowadays because of coaching and all of this. This is something we're going to discuss in different videos. But now I created something that's kind of trendy on social media, that's like the iceberg of things. So I want to show you, dun 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 dun, boom, the iceberg of self-knowledge. Yeah, so if you haven't seen this trend yet, the iceberg is usually things that start like with concepts and ideas that most people know. Yeah, so it's the tip of the iceberg, it's the visible part, and then we go a little deep with things that most people don't know or haven't heard about or usually don't see, and then we go really deep all the way here. So at the end of this video, you will have a lot of different concepts and authors and ideas. So stick with me, and I promise that you at least learn something. Yeah, if you already knew most of those things, nice. I would love to discuss some things with you. We could even record a podcast together. But most people don't know it, and I have over 10,000 students and mentees to prove that I'm right. Yeah, so as I said, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, I'm a consultant, I'm a business mentor, and I'm a business growth specialist, if you could say. But I like to call myself a nexilist. Yeah, I like to solve problems and create things with people. So that's why I have to know this, because this changed my life. Yeah, coming from a very poor childhood, knowing myself, knowing what I want, knowing how I react to certain things, and how I really can't deal with certain kinds of people, with certain kinds of jobs, really helped me, funnel through and choose the things that were right for me. And I'm still choosing them, but I'm really happy, I'm really satisfied with that, with what I do and how I help people. So let's do this. Let's get started with behavior. Yeah, so the most visible thing about yourself is your behavior. Yes, it's how you react to things, it's how you deal with problems, it's how you deal with adversity, it's how you deal with people talking to you, with different people, with change. So everything here is all about how you move, how you navigate the world. Yeah, how you behave. That's why we say that behavior is usually the most visible, the most exposed part of yourself. Okay, next thing, we go to skills. Usually the skills that you have, and this is very interesting because different philosophies, different ways to see the world will define skills differently. Yeah, for a nexilist, skill is everything that you know how to do. Yeah, that you know how to work around, that you know how to create. So even soft skills like communication, resilience. Yeah, so how you deal with problems, how you deal with difficulties. This is also considered skills. Some people are more utilitarian. I would say utilitarianism. I don't know. It's persons that are focused on skills that are related to work. Yeah, useful in big quotes skills. If you think like that, maybe if you read some of the authors, or if you stick with me, you learn that all kinds of behaviors could be a skill if you're looking with the right lenses. Yeah, so if you speak well, if you're an introvert, if you're shy, yeah, if you're angry sometimes, those could be considered skills if you tamed them, if you manage to get them under control. Okay, so it's all about the perspective. And then we have our public identity. Yeah, so we usually create some personas We have the Alan that's on YouTube that's completely different from the Alan that's talking to his fiancée, soon-to-be wife. Yeah, we have the Alan that's speaking in Portuguese. We have the Alan that's speaking in broken Chinese and the Alan that's speaking in English. Yeah, so because of the whole construction of my ego, my personality, my traumas, the things that I watched when I was younger, the fact that I can speak English relatively well, not having being born in a country that speaks English makes me more confident to speak English and to make mistakes in English. Therefore, I am usually considered by people around me a linguist or a polyglot, which I'm not. I just like languages and I focused enough time to learn them. So you see, public identity. I could be willing to create impressions on people related to specific things that I have under the iceberg that we're going to talk about soon enough. But public identity is not how necessarily people perceive you. It's how you want people to perceive you. It's how you act publicly, especially in different scenarios, in different with different groups, that you kind of pay attention to yourself to see how you want to be perceived. Usually if you speak more properly, if you make jokes of people that usually you really get along well, you know. So for example, you have a very good friend of yours, you talk like a BS all the time, you talk different random things, conspiracy theories and everything. All of a sudden you two see yourselves in a different scenario, and then you start kind of trying to make them quiet, kind of making jokes about them to other people to impress those other people. This is not a crime. This is not a problem. We all have seen this in movies and TV shows, and we see this in TV shows and movies because this is real. This is our public persona, or two different public personas clashing, you know, in combat, because you don't know who you want to be at this time. So maybe you're more yourself with your friend, and then you're not truly yourself in front of this new group, and this is clashing. Understanding these situations will help you become more self-aware, and will help you make less mistakes with other groups and with your friends and maybe your family. Yeah, teenagers do that a lot with their parents. Yeah, I've done that, I know. And then to finish off the top of our iceberg, we have some authors that will be really interesting for you to read or to take a look at if you haven't yet. We're going to start from the right. We have Behaviorism. Yeah, it's a learning theory or a psychological theory from Skinner. Yeah, the author's name is Skinner. Basically, he's saying that we have different stimuli from our environment. Yeah, like when you do Duolingo, you learn something on Duolingo, you get points. That's a stimulus. Yeah, you get different stimuli, and these stimuli will create chemical or behavioral characteristics on you that will make you associate those with good or bad things. Basically saying the way that you were raised, the way that you perceived situations in school, the way that you perceived interactions as negative or positive will make you probably want to get more of it or less of it, depending on different aspects of the iceberg that we'll talk about, but also depending on how averse, how much do you want to avoid those situations, or do you want to get more of those situations? For example, social acceptance. Yeah, we have the whole pyramid of needs that we'll discuss later on, but social acceptance, social rejection. Yeah, everything has like a positive and negative end. So you could be really, really accepted by becoming something that you are not, become someone that you're not, and then you start replicating that throughout your life because you want more social acceptance, and you associate social acceptance with that behavior that you had, not necessarily being true. Maybe that wasn't true. The other thing is also true. Maybe you were yourself, or you thought that you were being yourself, but you were rejected just by a specific person, a specific group. And if that continues to happen, or depending on how intense that was, even if it's just once, you associate that behavior of being yourself or talking about something that you like with being rejected. So you quit that completely. Yeah, so that's kind of the theory in a nutshell. I hope I don't butcher it, I don't destroy it, but you can read it. It's very useful if you're a teacher or if you're working with educational products, because you can associate behaviors and different stimuli throughout your learning experience, your learning platform, and your software. That could be really interesting. There's also experiential learning theory from David Kolb. Basically, he's saying that learning is iterative and it's a construction, and you have to repeat, and you have to, to really grasp skills and behaviors and social constructions in your mind. You have to go through it, usually socially, not necessarily, but usually through other through interactions with other people, which is really interesting because we are in the AI era, and a lot of people are learning a lot of things, but they're not kind of experiencing those things because they just put them in their heads, or they have them in their pockets with AI, but they haven't truly seen those skills in the real world, so they can't get social feedback from those skills. So that's really interesting for the future of education, for example. Then you have Vygotsky with the ZPD. Yeah, it's basically social learning. Yeah, so the more you're exposed to behaviors and to skills and to things happening to you in the closer circle around you of people, of behaviors and groups, the more you develop those as well. Again, I'm just summarizing it. It's a lot more complex than that, but it's really interesting if you're working in yourself, in your own learning, or in your own traumas and things like that. And then we have public identity. We have like Erving Goffman, which is really, I haven't finished reading it yet, but the general aspects of the book and the articles that he wrote can be found online and summarized. It's basically how you present yourself or your other selves in everyday life, and it's a combination of things. It's and it's really interesting and exciting to see, because even the reaction that you get from different people, different groups, and the way that you try to impersonate this new self of yours tells a lot about you. Yeah, it says a lot about you and your traumas and the things that you need to work on, and it's really cool to see. Now we get out of the very open space, the tip of the iceberg, and we go into a little bit more depth. So we start talking about values and emotional triggers. And I'll try to go a bit faster here. So when we talk about values, everyone has them. You have them. Even if you say, like, I don't know what my values are, that's a problem. But you do have them, because you got them from your parents, the people that raised you, the people that you spent most time with. You do have values, even if you don't like them. Right? Even if you like internally, when you're with yourself, you think that's a dark thought. You think that's something that you want to change. It's something that you're ashamed of, and maybe you shouldn't be. But we should analyze that later. Again, I'm not a psychologist, but perhaps your values are pretty cool. And I'll give you an example from my life. But the people that you're involved with don't think so, and consequently, therefore, you think that your values are not cool. For example, I've always thought that cheating on the spouse, or being like a ladies' man, because I was raised in an Italian family, so you know what I mean. So being those things, or we're not nice, we're not okay, and being nice to people, and being like trying to collaborate and create nice things together, it was seen in my family as kind of like soft, so I wanted to be those things, I wanted to do those things, but I thought they were too soft, and I would be a loser in no time if I kept doing that. The more I traveled, the more I knew people, and I got to know new groups of people with new values, the more I understood that, yes, I was a little bit naive, but not that much. There's a balance between how naive I was to how not naive the people I grew up with were, and I was kind of here. So just an example. And then emotional triggers. So what makes you tick negatively and positively? So what kind of action, results, or accomplishments makes you really happy and the opposite, like what makes you angry, what makes you unhappy, what makes you anxious. You have to map those. You have to understand the bodily reaction to the feelings that you're having. Otherwise, you won't know your limit. You won't know what's affecting you. Yeah, because the more accomplishments or the more things you have going on in your life, the more different feelings you have from different areas, from different departments of your life. And it's very important to map them. Otherwise, with time, you may have something what people call like a burnout, or you may just like transfer things from departments of your life. For example, maybe your marriage is pretty good, it's excellent, but you start reacting in your marriage because you're not sure how your job is affecting you, or vice versa. Yeah, so it's very common. So understand your emotional triggers, and we'll talk more about that later. In order to understand those and to understand the tip of the iceberg, we have to go through our cultural beliefs. Yeah, actually our cultural background, and consequently our beliefs. Yeah, so how were you raised? You might have been raised by a Catholic family, by a Christian family, but nowadays you say, nah, I'm okay. I even make fun of religion. I'm not really religious. But you are probably culturally Christian and you don't know, and that's okay. That's not a problem. But even though you don't go to church, even though you're not exposed to values you don't follow, you don't practice, you probably have some of those values and speeches in your head, which is okay, as I said. But you have to acknowledge that, and you have to understand how that affects you. Yeah, that's very important. I'm not just talking about religion, but religion is the most relevant topic. It could be anything. It could be different aspects of the way you were raised, different aspects of your culture that you were raised on. Even if you're raised in a different country, maybe your parents are Brazilian or Spanish. Yeah, we never know. So there are certain beliefs that even though we don't like, whenever we are under stress, duress, we kind of express them. Yeah, so you're trying to be a really cool boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, but when some things are really, really bad, you kind of like show in your behavior. See, we go all the way up in the iceberg again. You show in your behavior some beliefs and some values that you got from your upbringing. Yeah, so understanding those and having difficult conversations with the people in your life will help you go through that and maybe improve that, or maybe change the reaction or accept that. Yeah, so if it's not something terrible, it's not a crime, it's not something that's affecting negatively other people in your life, maybe the only option is to accept it. Who knows? Then we got the authors, but I have to finish with motivations and unconscious bias. So what are motivations and unconscious bias? Let's start with the biases, because it's a buzzword nowadays. A lot of people know them, but not a lot of people really understand them. So what are biases? So our brain doesn't like changes. Our brain doesn't like new things. It doesn't, because it wants to survive. The goal is to reproduce, chemically speaking. Yeah? The goal is to reproduce, to be alive, and to extend your legacy to as long as possible. Whenever you see something new, whenever you face a new challenge, a new job, a new relationship, some things like that, your brain doesn't understand that it's just a new job, that it's just a new Zoom meeting. It thinks that you are at war. It thinks that there's a tiger running after you and you're going to die. So all of the hormones and the chemistry and the things that it releases in your body are usually not so good. Okay. With that in mind, we have different drives. What are drives? We have like different software in our head that tends to lead us to certain patterns of thought, to certain ways to access memory, to certain validations to our own reality, because the brain is kind of lazy. So imagine if you could remember everything that you ever saw. Everything, like everything, even the corner of something, even like, it's impossible. You would be crazy. There's not enough space. So to synthesize memories, our brain usually gets some drives, some software to kind of filter through and then save them. To recover memories, the same thing. And there are some biases that are related to the way that we speak and the way that we relate to people, okay? So basically, the more the more we depend on our biases from our childhood, from the way we were raised, and other biases that are not necessarily good if we're not aware of them, we tend to be guided by those biases. Yeah. So for example, confirmation bias, it's the most common one. It's our brain will tend to confirm our beliefs. Yeah. So when we talk to someone, we want to win the argument because our brain wants to confirm that the reality that was mapped in our brain is the truth. Everyone else is wrong. Yeah. So when we learn more, we study more, and we learn how to collaborate and talk to people, we tend to be less confirmation bias oriented. We tend to be more curious. We tend to, okay, maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, I really like those experiences. Like, instead of winning, you want to learn. The definition of winning for you is learning and interacting and having a good time talking. Yeah, so biases are something that we really want to study. Motivation. So what drives you? Not your brain, not your body, not the chemistry in your body. What drives you? What motivates you to wake up? Is just to pay the bills? That's okay. But beyond paying the bills, what's in there? Like, what do you want to do? Like, if you didn't have the money problem, what would you be doing? So understanding your motivations, usually going through all of those things will lead you to your motivations. And they might have motivations of short, medium, and long term. Okay, so it's important to understand and prioritize those periods, because if you keep working now on motivation of long term, you might be wasting your time on the short term. Yeah, so it's important to understand those. All right, some authors before we move on. We have cognitive behavior therapy. If you don't know what it is, take a look. Yeah, it's from Aaron Beck. There are different authors about this topic that wrote about this topic. It's basically one of the most common therapies nowadays on how to deal with your reactions to situations and things, and how to kind of give new meaning to the way that you are wired. Yeah, give new meaning to your biases, to your triggers, to different things. It's interesting. I recommend that you actually do it with a specialist, not to yourself or with someone that's not a specialist, because it's kind of complicated. And then we have rational emotive behavior therapy, which I don't know much of, but it was recommended to me by someone who's a specialist in CBT. But take a look. I think it's really interesting. There's some things about values. If you're not sure about your values, there are different ways to map your values with tools. Yeah, so you can use the value survey, RVS. Yeah, Rockich value survey, theory of basic human values. Yeah, from Schwartz. And then we can talk a little bit about attachment theory. Which is basically the more you interact with things and people, the more you create attachments, and those attachments will kind of model who you are and your preferences and the way you relate to the world, because you probably want to keep those attached things close to you. Yeah, so it's pretty complex. It's pretty nice to understand, because maybe you're being attached to something that's no longer there, like something from your childhood, and then you get rid of it and you kind of free. You know, it worked for me for sure. And then there's Daniel Goleman with emotional intelligence. It's very widely known. I think that most people know it, but if you don't, it's really interesting. Emotional intelligence, it's the new thing. It's the new, like in Brazil, there was this time that everyone said that if you spoke English, you were really ahead of everybody else. Emotional intelligence worldwide is now the new English, you know, the new IT skill. Like if you're emotionally intelligent, you know where you want to go, and you know how to position yourself. You have the 7 skills that I usually mention from the Nexialists that I'll talk more about in other videos. You can drive yourself to a pretty successful stage in your personal and professional life. Yeah, that's what I think, and that's what many people that I work with think as well. Let's go through the end point. Yeah, the very end. I'll go through all of them together. So core identity is like when no one's looking. Yeah, who is the person? Who is you inside your head when no one's looking, when you have time, when you're bored? Yeah, so this is your core identity. Of course, it's much more than that, but it's usually how I see it. Yeah, what are your fears and desires? Yeah, so what's the worst fear that you have in your life? Is it being homeless? Is it being unloved? Is it being unlovable. Yeah, so there are different deep fears. It's not just like losing my job. What's at the end of that, string of fears? It's very important to understand, because then you can talk to yourself and talk to that fear. Desires. What is it that you really want? It's not like a temporary desire, like, sometimes I want to have sex to a lot of people. Sometimes I want to drink a lot and have fun. It's not that. It's like desire, like the deep thing in at the end of your soul that drives you every day. You may not think about that every day because it's at the end of the iceberg. It's not common to think about those. But once you find those and they change in different stages of your life, you'll probably get more time and more energy to work on the right things, in quotes, of course. Unresolved trauma. Everybody, even if you have great parents, great people that raised you, there are some trauma there. There's some trauma for everybody. Understand what's yours, how it's affecting your relationships, how it's affecting the way you deal with the world, the way you map the world, the way you talk to people, the way you deal with work. Yeah, so if you understand how it affects you, you don't even need to solve it right away. You can solve it later. But if you understand how it affects you, you can talk to people, you can kind of explain to yourself and to others that matter to you what's happening. Yeah. So for example, I absolutely have unresolved trauma that affects my relationships, but my partner knows it, people that work with me know, and it's not affecting them negatively anymore. I hope so. Yeah. So understand those, map them. Personality traits, that could be everything from how your DNA is formed to how your physiology works against or in favor, of your goals and yourself and your reality. Some people don't like to wake up early. Some people don't like to talk a lot. Some people really like to talk. Some people like to touch people. Some people in a more appropriate way, of course, but some people like to not being touched at all. Understand that these are not problems. These are just how you are. This is personality traits. This is just how you map the world. This is just how you relate to other people. Understand those, and if they're not affecting you, you're okay with them. Enforcing them to others, explaining them to others, and then navigating the world together, each with their own personality traits. That's not a problem. Yeah, it's a very complex topic, and the end goal here, the thing that I take as a lesson for me, is if it's not affecting your experience in the world, it's just about what other people thinks. Whoa, what other people think? Probably it's not a big problem. Yeah, it's not affecting other people. It's not affecting you. It's just about perception. It's not a big problem. And to wrap it up, subconscious beliefs. Those are the hardest ones because those are very difficult for you to map yourself. Yeah, everything that's down at the bottom, it's really hard for you to map yourselves. That's why we need social feedback. That's why we need interactions. We need new experiences. Yeah, and I'm not even saying that everyone should travel the world, all continents, like I did, live in China for over a year. Well, all I'm saying is have experiences beyond computers and cell phones and things like that. Expose yourself to something new. And I'm not saying that you should go into a shopping mall and start screaming like people do on TikTok. All I'm saying is find a group or a meetup or an app that can get you in touch with other people in real life, just to discuss ideas, talk about things, have a meal, and then understand how you feel about that. If you feel great. If you feel bad, try to understand why. Is it all because of that person? Is it because you truly don't like that person? Or is it because something is not connecting? Because you're never going to find a person that you fully identify with, so you can have a very good friendly conversation, that you can have a very very harmonious relationship. That's not going to happen. You have to build that, and in order to build that, you have to understand those and other concepts, which I'm just introducing to you. Okay, this is me reading a lot and using that in my work and my personal life, and just sharing that here for people that would like to see. Some authors, Maslow, yeah, this guy is great. You should use that hierarchy of needs, pyramid of needs. Yeah, a very important learning that I got is not necessarily because you're older you're going to be higher on the pyramid of needs. You could be really high at some point of your life and then go back. Okay, it's not about how much resources you have or how much money you have per se, or how old you are, how experienced you are. Those could change in different times of your life and in different areas of your life. You could be really advanced in the pyramid of needs at work and be really, really down there, romantically speaking. Okay, it's very important. It's basically a pyramid of needs that goes from physiological needs like having sex, drinking water, eating, to safety, and then perception of others, and then legacy, and then improving myself and others' lives. Yeah, it's really good. There's another theory of needs from David McClelland. And Carl Jung also talks about the shadow self. There's this guy, Kolb, the body keeps the score. This is actually in my reading list, but someone, my mentor, recommended it to me, and I kind of read the summary and watched a few videos about it. I think it's amazing, and I want to go through the whole book because I think it's going to help me a lot. Okay, and I hope it helps you as well. Well, I was Alan. I am a Nexialist consultant, technology expert. I help people in different ways with videos, with consultancy in big companies, medium companies, small companies, mentorship for individuals. I have courses, I have training, I have free time that I sometimes spend with people via Meet just to talk about things. So if you feel like you want to have a chat, you want to discuss a few things in English, in Portuguese, in a little bit of Spanish, in a very bad Chinese, I'm here. Just send me a message. See ya.